order. The North Hunterdon-Voorhees Regional High School District Board of Education meeting on Tuesday, April 21st, 2026 is now called to order. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 10-4-6, adequate notice giving the time, date, location, and to the extent known, the agenda of this meeting was sent to the Hunterdon County Democrat, Star Ledger, and Courier News on January 7th, 2026, and published on January 12th, 2026. In addition, notice of this meeting has been posted at the North Hunterdon High School and Voorhees High School, provided to the municipal clerks of Bethlehem Township, California Borough, Town of Clinton, Clinton Township, Franklin Township, Glen Gardner Borough, Hampton Borough, Highbridge Borough, Lebanon Borough, and Lebanon Township, Tewksbury Township, and Union Township, as well as other interested parties, and posted on the legal notices section of the district website. Fire exits are located in the directions indicated. If alerted to fire, please move in a calm and orderly fashion to the nearest smoke-free exit. Restrooms are located through the doors behind this desk and to the right as indicated. At this time, please silence all cell phones. I do just want to also read the mission statement. The North Hunterdon-Voorhees Regional High School District empowers all students through innovative and personalized learning to achieve their full potential, embrace lifelong learning, and contribute responsibly to a changing world. Roll call.
Ms. Ayers? Here. Mr. Chapman?
Here.
Mr. Hanley?
Here.
Ms. Hintz?
Here.
Mr. Lordy? Absent. Mr. Matthews?
Here.
Ms. Mezzacappa?
Here.
Mr. Morgan?
Here.
Ms. Reyes?
Here.
Mr. Spanton?
Here.
Ms. Stein?
Here.
And Mr. McIsaac?
Here. All right. Stand for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we have our working session, so a lot of these things obviously we'll be reviewing and discussing and then acting on them next week. The first item of business we have are 2 minutes from March 17th and March 24th. Was there anything in the minutes that anybody wanted to bring up, address, or had any questions about? Okay. Our next section is our NJ School Board training. So this is for our superintendent and Board of Ed self-evaluation process. I know I've been sort of alerting to the board that this process would be beginning, and this is sort of the official kickoff with the facilitation that we're going to have from Kathy Foria, our field services rep. And then there'll be some additional information both from Kathy and from Dr. Burgess regarding next steps. And if you saw the email tonight, you should have access to the link in an email if you wanted to pull it up on your computer. I know Kathy will have it up there. So Kathy, welcome. Thank you for coming back.
Well, thank you for having me again tonight. I think at this point I have met just about all of you at least once, maybe.
But my name is Kathy Foray. I am the field service rep for Somerset and Hunterdon counties. And tonight we are talking about the CSA evaluation and the board self-evaluation process and the tool that you will use to do that. I know that you have a lot of business to cover tonight, so we are going to try to go through this very efficiently. But if you have questions along the way, feel free to stop me, ask your question. We'll have time for questions at the end too. Superintendent evaluation. Think of the superintendent evaluation not just as something you're doing to check off a compliance box. It's actually one of the most important things that you'll do during the year as a board member, because it's your way of holding your superintendent accountable. Your superintendent has a really, really big job. He is accountable for just about everything that goes on in your school district. It's a huge job, and you all have big jobs with overseeing that. And your superintendent evaluation process is the tool that you have for oversight and accountability. This is what we'll be talking about tonight, some legal guidelines, the process itself, evaluation tools, and just as a reminder, if you go back to our ethics presentation over the winter, if you have a relative that works in the school district, you may be conflicted from participating in the superintendent evaluation process. I did give you a chart from the School Ethics Commission defining who a relative is to you. If you need that, I have it. I'm happy to send it to you again. You also can check with your attorney. We always advise, if you think you might be conflicted, always reach out to Brendan and he can help you check with your board attorney. Again, accountability, the evaluation of your superintendent is your means of oversight and appraisal of the effective management of your school district. When we talk about going back to the ethics and your roles and responsibilities, when we talk about one of your roles being appraisal, your main way of appraisal is your superintendent evaluation. I keep going back to the next slide, or forward to the next slide, sorry about that. So again, think of this in terms as your main way of holding the district and the system accountable, and use it as a tool of continuous improvement, as a cycle of continuous improvement. There's a lot of really good research that shows that a relationship between the board and the superintendent, if you have a good relationship, it helps with the achievement of the students in your school. So use it constructively when you're writing comments. Make them constructive comments. If you feel that there's room for improvement, that's fine, but have your comments be constructive and a means of helping your district move forward in a positive way. These are your legal guidelines. You have these. There's a sheet in your folder, and in the folder is a booklet about the evaluation process. On the back page, I think the back 2 pages of that booklet, it outlines this as well. But on the left side there, 18A are all of the statutes that govern public education in New Jersey. On the right side is the administrative code. Those are the regulations for how those statutes, the laws, are implemented. QSAC, if you don't know what QSAC is, it is the Quality Single Accountability Continuum. I don't know where you are in your QSAC cycle, but the DOE will come in every 3 years and they look at everything. One of the things they look at, one of their sections is governance. They will look to see whether you have completed your superintendent evaluation. They will look to see whether you've had training on the superintendent evaluation. And these are 2 of those indicators. Another indicator is your mandated training, so make sure you do your mandated training as well. This is also covered in Governance 1. So if you're a new board member, you will have taken governance superintendent evaluation training. Is the use of our tool required? It is an optional service that we offer to boards to help you with your evaluation. It provides for a standardized methodology to meet the statutory requirements. It allows for full participation by all, again, non-conflicted board members. It's anonymous. When you're filling it out, it's all anonymous. Your board president isn't going to see what you wrote or how you rated it. Your superintendent isn't going to see it. I don't even look through them. I hit a button and it compiles and I send it to your board president, but it's anonymous. And it was developed in collaboration with NJASA, which is the New Jersey Association of School Administrators. That's your superintendent's professional organization. And they worked on it for about 2 years, I believe. So making the process seamless. Your census is up to date. I checked before you came, so thank you to your BA. Your BA is the only one that can update the census. You have to identify if you have a conflicted board member, or if your board president is conflicted, then there'll be an alternate lead on it, and that will all be marked in the census. And have you developed an evaluation calendar? If you haven't, it's okay. You have to do what's best for your board. I put a sample evaluation calendar in your folder so you can see about where you are. But the most important point is that it's due July 1st, and you need to work backwards from there. Now, how you do that is up to you, again, as a board, and what works best for your board, but you want to make sure that you have your evaluation conference scheduled and you're not scrambling at the last minute to try to get a meeting in to get it in by July 1st. Your BA must enter the board president as the board president into the NJSB platform and census, which you did already, so thank you for that. This is just about making sure the census is correct. You have all these slides, so you can look through them. If you have questions, let me know. This is, again, a sample calendar. So we're at the end of April, where you want to start thinking about doing your evaluation. But again, you do what's best for your board and what works with your own timing. This is our evaluation process. So you start with goal setting. Set district goals together collaboratively. Your superintendent creates an action plan, reports out periodically on the goals. You can do a pre-conference if you want, where you can answer questions about where you are with the goals, or just if there's any questions that anybody has about the process, you can do that. Not all boards do an evaluation pre-conference, but you can do one if you'd like to. The superintendent will go in and do his part for our tool, which is completing his self-assessment of the district goals. After that, you'll get an email where you can log into our tool and start the process, and you'll complete the evaluation individually. After that, all non-conflicted BOE members will meet in executive session, go over the compilation, and decide what the majority opinion is. You have to RICE notify your superintendent. I did give you a sheet that defines what a RICE notification is, but anytime you talk about somebody's employment at a public meeting, you have to send them a notice at least 48 hours in advance, and they have the option of having that conversation or discussion in public session or executive session, but you should typically have it in executive session. Then after you've met, determined what your majority opinion is, and it goes by majority opinion. So, and there's 12 of you, so it will, you'll go by each individual to determine what your majority opinion is for the evaluation. Your minority absolutely will have a chance to voice their opinion, but what goes in the actual report is the majority opinion of the full board. So after you sit down together and figure out what your majority opinion is, Brendan will type up the annual report, or you can even start that part together in the process if you'd like to, and then you'll meet and discuss it in an evaluation conference with your superintendent, again with RICE notification and executive session. At that time, when you have your conference, you can allow the minority opinion to be voiced if they like to voice their opinion. And then your board president, your superintendent have to sign it. Pre-conference we covered. Any questions on that? District goals assessment. So when I was a board president, a lot of times I'd get questions like, what goals are we evaluating the superintendent on again? It's your district goals that you set collaboratively with your superintendent. There are 3 to 5 of the most critical focus areas for the year to move your district forward and advance student achievement. And then you use the evaluation process to hold your superintendent accountable for those goals. It should be an annual collaborative process between the board and the superintendent, and keep in mind that some goals can be multi-year. So maybe you have a goal that you want to close an achievement gap. It might be a couple of years before that shows up in the data. So keep that in mind that you can set a multi-year goal, and it might take a couple of years for that to be achieved. So something to keep in mind. Action plans, when you set the goals and you vote to approve those goals as a board, your superintendent will be developing action plans, and those action plans should include indicators that let you know whether that goal was achieved or not. And then, of course, progress updates throughout the year. Those should be on your agenda. This is what our website looks like if you're looking, if you have you're ready to log in and do your superintendent evaluation. Go to our website, just scroll all the way down from our homepage. It's down there on the right, and that's just what it looks like. This is what it looks like when you log in. This is what the district goals assessment part looks like. So you'll mark whether you feel it was achieved, there was satisfactory progress made, or little or no progress made. You can leave comments. Try to leave constructive comments. As a board president, it is very, very, very helpful to have comments that are constructive when you're doing the final evaluation summary. So help Brendan out and leave him some constructive comments. This is what it will look like when it's compiled. So again, this will go to your board president, and that will eventually be shared with you, but this is just an example of what it looks like once it's all compiled. Again, there's no names attached to it, it's just numbers and then anonymous comments. After you are done with the goals portion of the evaluation, you'll move to standards. So we have standards that are specific that you'll be evaluating your superintendent on, and they didn't just come out of nowhere. They actually came from this National Policy Board for Educational Administration, this ISLLC. If you want to do some light reading, there's actually like an 18-page document online that talks about how they came up with these leadership standards. But they reflect qualities and values of leadership work integral to student success, and they assist your boards in identifying areas of strength and where more focus may be needed. And these are the 6 standards: mission, vision, and core values, governance, ethics, and professional norms, operations management, curriculum, instruction, assessment, and school improvement, community of care, equity, and family engagement, professional capacity, community of school district personnel. So when someone asks you, what does a superintendent do? You can say they're responsible for all of these things in our school district that are actually really, really important to the success and achievement of your students. And this is what your standards assessment will look like when you log in. Again, you will rate as exemplary, proficient, area for growth, unsatisfactory, or not observed. If you are a new board member and you just haven't observed that yet, you can mark that. It doesn't reflect positively or negatively. It's just neutral. And remember, if you are a new board member, you are evaluating from the time that you joined the board to now. So again, you can leave comments here as well. The indicators for each standard are listed. And again, try to leave some constructive comments if you can. And this is what the sample compilation for a standard will look like when you get it. Again, all just numbers and anonymous comments. All right, so the annual performance report will be your compilation, your majority opinion, and then that will lead to what your annual performance report looks like. Anybody have any questions about any of this so far?
Kathy, when you're talking about the majority opinion, obviously that is represented in terms of where the numbers are, but you're talking also majority opinion in terms of a summation of the comments as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The final report
That you give to your superintendent should be what the majority of your board feels. So if you have 7 that are like, great job, but then 5 that are like, so you go with the 7. Or yes.
Need proportionate representation, does that matter?
That's a great question. And the answer is, for this purpose, no.
So it's a strict
Every
number.
person-
Yes, you're not using your weighted
Okay.
votes for the superintendent evaluation, it's number of people.
I have a question too. I think you mentioned that we're supposed to get together as a board
Yes.
and talk about this.
Yes.
That's before we fill out the form?
No, so you'll
Fill out the form, this online individually. When it'll get compiled. Usually, as board president, I would give a date to my board members and say, please have it filled out by this date, which should be before whatever board meeting you want to sit down and talk about it. So it'll be compiled by then, and then you'll sit down and you'll talk about the compiled document. So all of you should have access to, or a printout or whatever of that compiled document, and you'll sit down together and decide, what the consensus is.
So looking at, Meryl, just looking at the calendar, and I feel like we may have done it this way last year. I think it was by the end of May, we had an executive session where there was sort of the compilation document, so that we were able to see what the opinions were, have some discussion. Then the charge is the compiling that allows us to have an executive in June, where that document is sort of more or less finished and affords us an opportunity for conversation in executive with Dr. Burgess as well, to meet the July 1st guideline or deadline.
Sounds right.
And I think that's kind of what we tried for last year. So I guess one of my questions building on that, Kathy, is how much time typically, like if we're trying to make a May executive, and I know Dr. Burgess has his things done, and we are on the cusp of receiving notification. So if I'm asking the board to be done, like I'm trying to figure out what window of time would I need to ask the board to be done so that that could be compiled for our May meeting?
It compiles like almost instantly.
Okay,
Yeah,
in
it's
terms
Really
of the
go in, hit
comments.
a button and it automatically, like, I'm not going in and compiling myself. I don't even look at it and see what everybody wrote. I just hit thing, it compiles automatically, and then I'll send it directly to you.
Okay.
And then you can, in whatever way you feel is best, get it to your
I'm
board
just
members.
back.
Thinking the timing so
Yeah,
that
you
we
have to
have
work
it for
backwards.
that May executive.
Yeah,
Okay.
the first one we'd have it.
So, the annual performance report has the majority opinion.
Mhm.
Where does the superintendent get the opportunity to hear minority opinion?
That would be at the summary conference.
At the conference?
Yeah.
So you'll hear it orally, but not, it won't be in the. written
Yeah,
report.
yeah, it's not in the final evaluation.
That goes in the personnel file, but the minority board members will have a chance to voice any concerns that they have that just didn't make it into the final evaluation.
If I may, is the term compilation used in two different ways?
Like one is you said you hit a button and it basically transcribes everyone's input into one document.
Yes,
But then there's this process of compiling all the inputs into a final report, and that's not a push a button, that's a.
no, that's what you'll
Work
sit
product.
down, you'll look at the
Compilation, which are the numbers
Okay.
and the comments, and then you'll determine as a board what the majority opinion
Okay,
from
so
that
that
compiled
second step-
document is.
That second step, you don't call it compiling.
Yeah, it's determining the majority opinion, I guess would be the right term for it. Anything else?
So,
Yeah.
yes, do you have an opinion on this? If you have a board that is comprised of a number of brand new members,
Mhm.
might not be saying that the conduct is unobserved, but they might have an opinion. But the board members who are more senior and seasoned, who have more knowledge about working with the topic, might have a different opinion that, from where I sit, perhaps would be weightier because they have more experience. How do we rectify the fact that you might have an evaluation where the majority is a bunch of brand new people that don't necessarily reflect the experience of the ones who have dealt with things for longer? And also, do you think it's appropriate in that situation for a conversation between the experienced ones and the new ones before we fill out the form?
You could certainly ask, say.
If you're unclear about goals, or if there's something you're unclear about, you can certainly ask. I would keep the evaluation, do the evaluation individually from what you have observed personally, but certainly if you have questions about the goals or the progress towards the goals, I think those would be appropriate questions. You could ask your board president, you could reach out to your superintendent and ask. And again, there's no harm with putting not observed.
I guess also,
Mhm.
Meryl, as you're saying,
Each of us has the experience of coming onto the board and only being there for that second half of the year and having this. I guess other members certainly feel free to weigh in. I think if there's things that I feel like I've observed, but I feel like the window is limited. In other words, I've seen a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I've tried to say that. Just to qualify that while I've not seen the entire year, all the dimensions of this, let me comment on what I have seen that is either this or that, as my own way of navigating that. And I don't know if others have navigated it similarly or not.
Yeah, it's a snapshot.
Yeah, and I think once, we'll all get the compilation, so we'll all be able to see what's been written, but we don't know by whom. So when we meet, before he does his summary of it, you can flush it out. So you might, when you were filling it out, you might not have, but once you start reading through what everybody else has said, you might be able to bring more, in that session that can be added to the summary, the final piece. It doesn't have to be locked in when you're doing the survey.
Good questions. These are your steps to your
Final outcome, so again, all the non-conflicted board members will meet to discuss and identify the majority opinion in executive session. Do not forget to raise your superintendent. You can either start with just the compilation. Your board president may see it and kind of get a good idea what the majority opinion is and maybe start a draft. Otherwise, you'll determine your majority opinion, and then the performance report will be written by the board president or the board president's designee if the board president is conflicted. And then you'll discuss that evaluation at the annual summary conference. We do have the annual report template that we'll send with the compilation of the evaluation, so you have something to use. And again, this is what the template looks like. And it's helpful, I think, too, if you bring a blank copy of this to the meeting that you'll have as a board to determine the majority opinion. It's sometimes helpful to just bring this and mark it off as you go, as you talk about things. Again, this is more of the template. You have a copy of this. And the annual summary conference. So again, all non-conflicted board members and superintendents will meet to discuss the evaluation in executive session. This has to be completed by July 1st. Share the evaluation with your superintendent before that meeting, so he has a chance to look at it. The minority opinion might be expressed again. And then the minutes of your executive session need to reflect that you held the annual summary conference. Next steps, so your individual NJSBA will compile your individual responses. You'll receive the confidential compilation. Rice notice your CSA, we've said that several times already. Write the performance report, you can use the template, and then you'll have your summary conference. So who keeps a copy? This is important. We don't hold on to the superintendent evaluations. We can't because they're a personnel document. Around late December, early January, they're like permanently deleted from our servers or files, however IT does it, but they're gone. But we do keep them until then because some boards, believe it or not, need them, or something happens and they contact us for their evaluation. So we do hold on to them until that point, but then they're purged. We recommend that your superintendent keep a signed copy for himself, and the board keep a signed copy. Some boards choose to keep their copy with their board attorney. And just some considerations. It's not a once-a-year event. You use it as an ongoing cycle, an ongoing system of moving your district forward and school improvement. Review the performance over a full year. Develop a system to retain evidence because your superintendent will be uploading that into the system. Progress updates and two-way communication are critical. So you, again, if you have questions or if you have questions about the goals or the progress towards the goals, just reach out and ask your board president, ask your superintendent. But hopefully you've been hearing progress updates throughout the year and you're pretty well versed in what those are. And it's the responsibility of all eligible members to participate. Again, it is one of the most important things that you'll do throughout the course of the year as a board member. So if you can participate, be sure to participate, give it the time and the thought that it deserves and that your superintendent deserves. All right, any questions about superintendent evaluation? Because we're moving right on to self-evaluation. All right, good. All right, self-evaluation's a little bit different. So self-evaluation, you should be aware that it is a public document. The superintendent evaluation is very, very confidential. It is a personnel document. It is highly confidential. Board self-evaluation is a public document. It can be over-requested. But we do recommend that you do it as a best practice. It's not mandated. It's not required. It's something that we say, you know what, if you're holding your superintendent accountable, you should hold yourselves accountable as well as the board. So provide self-reflection of the board as a whole and individual board members. You can rate yourselves. It can be completed by all board members, including your superintendent. There's no statutory deadline. You can do it any time of the year that's good for all of you. And again, it's not required, but it's best practice. It improves governance and management. The results can be used to develop your board goals if you have board goals and you use them. It brings your individuals, all of you, together as a team. Again, it's something that you're doing together. And it sets a standard for board conduct and operations. So you complete it annually. You can include your superintendent. It has board goals and standards. It's pretty well aligned now with the superintendent evaluation, how it looks and how it's structured. It determines priorities in 6 areas of board governance. I compile the results, deliver the summary, and review the findings for the board. So I do not read through your superintendent evaluation, but I do read through your entire board self-evaluation, and I'm not reading through it to judge all of you. I'm reading through it because I'm looking for comments that can be considered evaluative of staff members or your superintendent, because you only evaluate your superintendent and that's confidential, so anything that winds up on your self-evaluation that could be considered evaluative, I'll highlight, I'll send it to your board president and say, hey, check with your board attorney, see if these might be considered evaluative. If they are, I'll redact them. But that's really what I'm looking for when I look through your board self-evaluation. And then we recommend completion timelines based on your reorg meetings and your board goal setting dates. Again, this is just what it looks like when you go to our website. This is what it looks like when you go to our website. These are the descriptions of our rating. They align with the CSA evaluation. Again, thank you for updating the census. So this is new, and I was very surprised by this last year when I was board president. So your board president needs to enter evidence, like your superintendent enters evidence of goal completion, so does your board president this year. If you don't have board goals, you can just hit that you don't have board goals, that's okay. But just something to keep in mind, if you have board goals, you might want to start keeping tabs on the completion, evidence of completion of those goals. Again, this is what it looks like when you go to our website. It's very similar to the superintendent evaluation. These are the board standards: vision, mission, and goals, policy, accountability for student achievement, governance, team relationships and accountability, resource management and oversight, and community leadership. And they come from NSBA's key work of school boards. Again, this is what it looks like when you log in. I'll move through these because I know we're short on time. And then at the end, you'll be able to answer reflective questions. And again, keep them constructive. Don't use the board self-evaluation to, I'm going to evaluate you and you. You can evaluate yourself and your board as a team. Try not to make comments about individual board members. It's just not good boardsmanship. And then we'll have a report. Board members can see their own report while you're doing it. You'll be able to see, and this goes for the superintendent evaluation as well, you can look and see who's done it, but you can't see, again, who wrote what. So it's anonymous in that aspect, is that you can't look and see, well, who left the comment or who rated each section what. And then you also, along with your compilation, that again, I'll compile it and send it to your board president. You'll also get a summary of your evaluation responses that you can use year over year to see where you are. And this is a year over year comparison and what that looks like. These are all of our CSA and board self-evaluation resources that are on our website. So you have a link to this. And remember, of course, you're evaluating only the board, your board team's performance and efficacy, not the district and not the staff. So use the opportunity as a conscious governance tool for improvement and how to improve your own board and be very effective so you help enhance student achievement here. Any questions? Yeah.
On board goals, are those, do those need to be publicly sort of part of an agenda or declared in any way?
You should vote on them together.
Okay.
Again, it's not a mandate, it's not mandated to
Right.
have board
Goals, but we consider it a best practice, but you should be deciding on board goals, and they can be things like we're going to start a new board member orientation, or we're going to make a board handbook, or things that apply to your own board and your functioning as a board.
Well, and the reason I bring it up is, we did have them. Part of this conversation is always sort of that moment of, let me make sure I can find them, and that we did in fact
Yes.
have them from last year. And we had talked about strategic alignment and goal monitoring being one because we launched the first year of the strategic plan. And obviously, a lot of Dr. Burgess's work is the reporting on that work. We had for ourselves a norm about, a goal about establishing governance and norms, professional conduct, which I know we've taken some steps in that direction. And then also community engagement and communication. So there's been some steps in that. I just didn't know if those, I cannot recall if they were officially done as part of an agenda voted on as the board, or just sort of discussed informally, and whether or not that makes a difference in terms of reporting out on them.
Yeah, I mean, you can vote on them and
You should, as far as reporting out, I think a good practice is when your superintendent is reporting out on the district goals, then maybe you take that opportunity, if you have a president's report, to report out on the board goals.
I don't think those came from thin air. I think.
No, they didn't come from thin air. They came from, I think, our last go-around, and they were sort of, they were surfaced from there. What I was unclear about is whether or not they had to be or were officially proclaimed and voted on at any point, or just mutually
Formalized.
agreed upon.
I know
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was actually like a vote, like,
Correct.
roll call or anything, I
Right.
think, but it was discussed as a board,
Yes.
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Correct.
And at least there was no one saying, no, I don't want that. We kind of,
Right.
with our
Yeah.
field reps' help, we
Mhm.
congealed around.
So it was consensus around.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
I
Yeah.
just don't recall either one way or
I
another,
believe
whether we said.
it was all recommended, like what we recommended, and it was compiled and said this is what the top goals were. If I recall
Yeah, there was
Yes.
more,
correctly,
yeah, there
right?
was a
It
few
was
more.
Yeah.
several, yeah.
And then we just tweaked the wording. I think that was the discussion of how it was worded.
So I would argue we did adopt them as a board, I'm just not sure if there was a vote.
Right.
That's what I was just
Consensus.
trying to get at, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could always do that going forward, talk about them, and then you can put them on the agenda.
Your district goals, and you can all approve them, if you do your board goals at the same time as your district goals. But some boards do them separate. Some boards do their board goals in January for reorg, and some boards do them over the summer and have them aligned with their district goals throughout the school year. But again, you have to do what's best for your board.
And actually, I see there was a fourth one.
On the second page. Operational efficiency and
So you
infrastructure.
have your work cut out for you.
About,
for-
yep.
for the
So I will
yourself,
share
right?
this out with the entire board just so that everybody has it. And thank you for the tip of, making it a habit of commenting on or reporting out on this, because I think that helps keep it
Yeah,
present.
sometimes they get lost,
Right.
new board members come on,
Well-
sometimes board members
Forget
forget
about
about them.
them, so it's good to
Yeah.
report out on them periodically and just have that be part of your agenda planning calendar.
Even though, and when I think of like each month, I know Dr. Burgess usually gives us some updates relatives to some of the strategic plan, things like that. His newsletter, his weekly updates will often have either the language of the goal or the reference to the goal kind of in items in there as well, which I recognize does keep them present, but also can easily make them invisible at the same time, simply because you see them over and over.
Yeah. All right, any other
Questions? All right, well, thank you. We always end with a thank you for everything that you do for your school and your district and your community and your students. So I wish you the best of luck. I know it's a very difficult budget year this year, but I wish you the absolute best of luck as you try to do the best you can for your students. I hope to see some of you next week at the county meeting, which is April 30th, right, Tara? Yes, so I hope to see you at the county meeting next week. And then, of course, workshop registration is open, and we have a lot of amazing professional development opportunities that are being planned and in the works. So we hope we'll see you there in October as well. And then I hope to see all of you again soon at a board meeting. So good luck. Have a great meeting. It was nice to see you all again. You're welcome. Any questions? Anything that you think of tonight I should have asked, you always feel free to reach out. All right, you're welcome.
I did not have a question.
Yes.
And you tell me that we can't discuss it, and I'm actually not looking for the why, but do we have any conflicted board members?
Not that
Not that I
I'm
know of any.
aware of, but I know with new folks in the self-reporting, because that would be, Kathy, correct us if I'm wrong, in terms of conflicted board members, it's generally relations with district employees who are.
The most common, well, I'll let your board attorney answer that question if he wants to. We always advise you check with your board attorney, but yeah, most commonly it's you have a relative working in the district.
And I used to be conflicted, but it's too long retired, so I'm not
Okay.
conflicted any longer.
And if you need the chart.
And let me know, I will send you the chart.
I remember you giving it out.
Yeah.
at The training in January.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jonathan?
But it can be others. I mean, it's in the context of what you're describing with respect to evaluation in the district, yes, it's family members, but as you all know, if we like to collective bargaining or other interests, perhaps, it could be something else. So it's a case by case, and the School Ethics Commission has done a sufficient job as making it as confusing as possible, and keeping us in making a living. So you can let us know if you have questions on that going forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, Kathy.
Thanks, Kathy.
All right, we have our working session. We're at the part of the meeting for our public hearing and adoption of the 2026-27 school year budget, which is actually the official public presentation is next week. But we do have some updates and information as that moves along. So at this point, Katie, I'll kind of turn to you to kind of tell us where we are in the process, what details are firming up and sort of next steps as well, and then what to anticipate for next week.
Of course. So at the last meeting, the board adopted the preliminary budget. We submitted that to the county office immediately with all the documentation supporting all of the budgeted numbers. They took their time to review, and we went back and forth with them a little bit last week. They do a common question and answer period with us, and they do have submitted their approval with us for the budget. So we are now approved by the executive county superintendent and our business administrator. So now it is our turn to take it back and finish our presentation, firm up all of the tax rate and schedules so that we can finish the budget presentation for next week. Again, this is a public presentation to the public in general, not necessarily for the board, so it's going to be aimed at the public next week. So as far as everything else, we will advertise our budget this week. Now, again, we do not have newspaper advertisements anymore, so it will be posted on our website. So the budget will be advertised on our district website, as well as the presentation next week. We'll post that on the website after that's finalized.
In terms of, since the audience sort of shifts from the board to the public, for folks who are new, and I know each year there's the presentation that goes with it, what are there typical components of the presentation, or what can folks who are new sort of expect about some of the additional details and information?
We'll reiterate some of the same topics that we've had for the past few months, but it will also be a little bit higher level so that we can reiterate some of the components, but also keep it understandable and make sure everyone understands the different pieces of the budget, especially the tax section. Being a regional district and the 12 municipalities, it is a little bit confusing how that changes each year. It is based on the equalized valuation of the town and the number of students that are attending from each town, so that weighs into the calculation of the tax base. So that'll just be something that I make sure I cover next week.
And I know this year we've been operating a little bit differently, which actually I think addresses one of our goals on communication in terms of the presentations that you've been doing over the past couple of months, getting them up onto the district website so that they can be viewed. I believe Dr. Burgess has them linked, or the site linked in here tonight as well. I know there was also the addition of the document that is sort of explaining your tax bill as well, which I
So
think.
that was the latest thing that I did add to that website, which is basically looking at your tax bill and being able to interpret. And me and Brendan had a lot of discussions revolving around this, just so that people understood that while our tax levy is going up 4.29%, that doesn't mean your tax bill goes up 4.29%. There are quite a few components in your tax bill, and if anyone had a chance to look at what was posted, the easiest way I can explain it out of all the documentation was for every dollar that your tax money goes to, 45 cents of it goes to the K-8 district, 22 cents goes to our regional district, 18 cents goes to municipal services like police, DPW, and admin, and then 15 cents of it goes to Hunterdon County, which is our parks and roads and recreation and things of that nature. So you know, when people talk about school taxes, that is the biggest part of their tax bill, but our portion of that school tax portion is anywhere between, and those calculations as well, anywhere between 20%, so depending on which municipality you come from, 20% of your tax bill could be to the K-8, or I'm sorry, to the high school, and 80% goes to the K-8. And then on a higher end, it was 45% actually went to the high school, and 55% went to the K-8. So again, it's depending on the size. A lot of times, you know, Glen Gardner Borough is going to be a lot different than Clinton Township, just based on size.
But when you're talking about those percentages of 45 and 55%, 55 from the K, 45 from the regional, that still is just the educational
That's just the
portion of
educational
your tax bill, which tends to be around 2/3-ish.
About 70%.
Yeah, somewhere of the total tax bill. Okay. And then I know you had some information in there also. You sort of gave an example of if you're in Clinton Township and your home's valuation is this, there's actually a way to sort of see what that translates to for you in terms of your tax bill, like what percentages or in approximate dollars that are going to for each of those.
So yeah, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole one day, where, you know, I live in Kingwood, so I went to Kingwood Township's webpage, and I can see my tax bill, and I view it all the time, because I have to pay my taxes, and they're not escrowed through my mortgage, so I have to go on and pay them, and so I get to see what they provide. And I was like, well, I'm sure everybody has that. So I started looking at different townships in our footprint to see what is there, and it's very interesting, it's quite different. Some towns really hide, or I shouldn't say hide, but they protect, you know, the information of their residents on what they pay for their taxes, and others, all you need to know is someone's last name. Put someone's last name in and find out exactly what they paid, whether or not they're in arrears for the taxes, whether or not, you know, what their assessment is. It's you know, it's just interesting from a open information perspective, what you can get from some towns and the others. So I did find one in our footprint, and I put a sample tax bill there just so people could see that breakdown. Hopefully, even if I couldn't get to the information in your town, I'm sure you could if you log in somehow or do something. But, you know, it really breaks it down from the county tax perspective, and that includes, you know, they break it down even a little bit closer. County tax, county library tax, county open space tax, and it has the district school tax. And when you see district school tax, that's the terminology they use to say for your K-8. So when they say district, that's K-8. And then the next one is regional school tax, which is your 9-12, so our district that we're in charge of here. And then it breaks it down for local, municipal, you know, and this one had a fire tax. So some places will have some different taxes there.
And that's kind of, yeah, and that's where I saw that information, and I guess next week, Katie, when it comes to the final tax apportionment of everything, can you just talk a little bit about what that is and sort of what helps shape and determine that?
So the A4Fs that are generated out of the budget software for each municipality gives us the tax rate based on the amount of taxes that we need to assess for each municipality. So we take our total budget number, and then that gets apportioned to each municipality based on, again, that assessed value and the number of students attending from that municipality. I take that information, I put it into a worksheet, and then I try to come up with, school tax for 26, 27. I then have to break it out into 2025 versus 2026 calendar year. So I kind of go through a process of putting that into a worksheet and coming up with the school tax rate for the calendar year after generating the fiscal year for the school year.
And because those two variables, I guess the total taxes on the municipality and the number of students that they're sending to the district, because those change every year, there's a different calculation that's happening.
There could be the instance where there typically is some municipalities, your tax rate will go up because we are raising taxes. However, there are some that are actually going down because the number of students is decreasing, or the amount of the assessed value is going up in certain townships, and then that makes some of the other townships look low, and then they'll actually have a reduction in taxes even though we're raising the total tax levy.
Because those other variables.
Because of the other variables moving down, right?
And then I know there was a question, I think, Dr. Burgess, you provided either some information about the whole concept of equalized value as well, as being one of those things where, because municipalities reassess on different schedules, my understanding is it's an effort to sort of keep everyone as equitable and current as possible.
Yeah, so originally I had thought it was the assessed value, based on what the towns do. And I think a lot of people believe that was the case. And it was one of these things that's, especially in an area that has as many sending districts as we do, that it's like, well, that town isn't doing their due diligence and they're not paying what they should because they haven't reassessed in 20 years. Whereas my town did. And then we found out that's not the case. It is, the county actually looks at the equalized value. And when you look at the county documents and you look at our equalized value that we get out of the budget software, it's not exact. And at first I'm one of those people that when it comes to numbers, it has to be exact. But I mean, it was within like $5 to $35 of, equalized value. So it was very close, but I'm sure there are some different calculations that you use there. So it's equalized value, which means that everybody is paying their fair share based on what the homes are worth in that area, according to the county tax officials, not versus the municipalities on when they last did their assessment.
Other questions, or, right? And then Meryl?
It sounds like, Brendan, what you've been trying to get out a lot of this presentation is this, I'll call it the so what for the individual taxpayer. Will the individual taxpayer get the context of
Right.
taxes may go up, may go down, it all depends on a lot of different things, or several different things. But the presentation will also have the justification for this 4.3 or 2.
Yes.
Whatever. That kind of does the whole, look at the
How did we
healthcare.
how did we get
Oh,
there?
yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yes.
Because, yeah, that's, I think, the first really important step is why are we getting to 4.29?
4.3.
Yeah. And then the nuances, like, look, because that doesn't mean your tax is going to go up by 4.
Right.
It may go up by different numbers. Even the high school district piece of it will go up, but now that's only a little piece of this bigger thing. Okay, that's all context.
Your whole
Yeah.
tax bill is not going up by 4.29%, a certain portion of it.
22% if that was the, and again, it varies, but it's around that, right?
And
that's a good.
it's all little, you never
Well,
really know. either.
We don't know how much anybody's tax bill is going to go up. It's just that we can say with a surety, it's not all on our shoulders that it goes up by.
Right, and it's not your whole tax bill, somebody shouldn't get in their head, oh, I pay X amount of taxes, and then do it times 4.3, and it's going to be on us, only a portion of your taxes. I think it's also another.
Yeah. And you can, I was using the document that's posted to the website. I just sort of personally ran it for myself, where you can look at the value per $100 of house value and figure out what portion, what dollar value of your taxes you are paying to the regional high school, and then what an increase actually translates to. Meryl?
Yes, to follow up with Brian's comment about why we're at 4.3 or 4.29, certainly we had an open meeting when we compared 2% and what cuts would need to be made if that's what we were going to do versus what we ultimately wound up with. But I'm wondering, because I think that goes a long way to transparency to the public, and I think the public is going to does hold the board accountable around this issue, is that information, might that be reiterated if we felt during the presentation there was a need for that?
Do you mean as part of a formal presentation or as discussion around the presentation?
I would
Yeah,
defer
okay.
to those who do it every year.
I'm open to suggestions. I typically wouldn't reiterate that, but if you'd like that to be a slide that we incorporate, I can do that.
So, but if I'm understanding what you said, Meryl, correctly, there's this idea of, we looked at different options here, and one of them would have meant additional cuts to the tune of X amount of dollars, potential programs or implications
Yes.
of what further cuts would have potentially meant.
Yes, so,
Okay.
so the public knows why we're at 4.3.
Got it.
And why we agreed to 4.3 and
Right.
not something less.
Right, okay.
I can roll it into just our budget goals, right? And I think that our budget goals are very, I know that you have the presentation, and those budget goals are what really drives what we want to keep and what we're willing to cut, right? And again, those budget goals are driven by our strategic plan, which is driven by our community input, so, you know, there's a much bigger picture, so we can make sure we incorporate that to the presentation as well.
Brian?
I'm not advocating for this to be in the presentation, but I wonder, conversation. So we kind of are in the weeds, you know, as a board, we need to be in the weeds of this. Is the public aware just how many other school districts that are facing this kind of, do you think? I mean, are there
Yeah, I
people
think
who would, Joe or Jane on the street would know that, oh, there's people who are raising taxes by 40% or 30% or whatever it is?
I mean,
Or is that just because I live in this bubble?
I think, and I mean, certainly, you know, I think there's a certain, we have a perspective on this simply because of our proximity to the work, I think in many cases, and I know, and I'm gonna comment in a little bit, and Andrew and I attended the board president, vice president roundtable. We had that since the last meeting, and we heard from all of our sending districts and the range of percentages that they were going to be raising. And you're right, you know, it's a much bigger picture than it is just of us. But I think we all sort of recognize in the room, by virtue of the positions we're in, we have a deeper understanding than I think I know my neighbors sometimes when I talk about it, you know, they don't know. And they're not looking very closely, and maybe a question comes up and I can clarify. And I mean, I would just use by way of an example, we've been posting those video presentations over the past couple of months. And I'm no web traffic expert, but based on YouTube views, it's not skyrocketing, in terms, you know, and it's even making the information available. And I could see, you know, whether we at a future communication on the other side of this process maybe seek to clarify, you know, some of what comes out of that as well. Just for those who are interested and want to learn and understand a little bit deeper, to be able to explain where we are, why we are, and some of the bigger picture challenges that are there, and certainly refer them back to the other resources we have. I mean, we have heard from some folks who have looked at those and actually thanked us for them. But I would say the sheer views on it don't give you the sense that, you know, that it's a lot of traffic.
And I know in the mainstream media, this has been an issue that's around New Jersey over the last few months. There's been news segments on some of the districts that are having to slash teachers,
Correct.
just
Yeah.
close schools and all
Yes.
that. So
Right.
it's out there. But I have a real quick question, Katie. So when we look at declining enrollment and then they can figure out the allocation per each district on how many students they're sending, what happens in school years? Say, we have big developments going on, I pass them all the time. Like, what if we get an influx from one or two towns of, you know, a dozen or more students? Does that impact their tax rate? Not until next year?
Not until they do the recalculation,
Okay.
and it's at 10/15 each
Yeah.
year,
Okay.
October 15th.
All right. Yeah, I'm just curious because we have so many big
And,
developments coming
Right.
on.
you mentioned, I know,
Yeah, go ahead.
Brendan and I have had this discussion too, that some of the projects that are going up are, you know, pilot projects, and we're not sure which ones are and which ones aren't, but for those that aren't familiar with it, pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes. And so basically a developer can come in and negotiate with the municipality for a building project and say, we'll pay you X amount of dollars per year for X amount of years, but we don't pay any property taxes. And right now, the way the law is written, is that the school is not entitled to a percentage of that payment. So property taxes then for everybody else has to go up. You know, at some point it has to be raised to absorb those students that are coming from those areas. So I know Brendan and I are going to work on some, trying to figure out what projects are pilot projects in the area, and then at least we have an idea of what we're dealing with at that point. I know you had some experience with.
Yeah, and I only share that because on my prior board experience with one of the developments that was coming in, the municipality did engage the school board about that project. And that's essentially when I learned about what they were and how they worked and how traditionally the schools are more or less usually cut out of that process and the money is guaranteed to the municipality. And then invariably you have students who move into those units who attend the school, and the school is not getting a portion of the payment that the town is making to the municipality, in some cases upwards of 30 years. And I know we've begun to talk a little bit about, and we actually have a sample resolution that Tara worked on tonight. It's one of those things where, as a board, in many of these instances, we're learning the ways that we are limited and our hands are tied. There are expenses that are moving, raising that are absolutely beyond our control. Last meeting, we talked a little bit about the funding formula and the lack of transparency and the lack of actual funding of the funding formula. And hence something like a resolution to sort of say something back to Trenton about just the unfairness of that. And the other thing to potentially broach is how we are liaising with our municipalities. And are there opportunities for conversations when we have a greater understanding about what projects are coming in, what potential pilot projects are in discussion, and is there an opportunity for us to have conversation with municipalities to see that as those kinds of projects happen or go forward, is there an opening for us to, for lack of a better word, be dealt in on the apportionment of some of that as those deals are brokered?
Or for those elected officials to be held accountable when their constituents' tax burden is not shared by the property that they brought in. And I'm imagining there's some special overarching policy or reason when a town can agree with a builder to allow that, and maybe we don't want to have a board discussion around that, but.
Yeah. Inasmuch as I understood it from the last go around, it's mostly incentives for the builders so that they're not looking, it's a financial incentive for them to invest into the project, and it's sort of a trade-off that they will not be paying the full freight of the kinds of taxes that they would otherwise have to pay to the municipality. And so that sort of sweetens the deal for the builder, and the advantage for the municipality is they are usually the sole recipient of a lot of that. And the schools are sort of cut out of the deal, despite the fact that students, will live there and ultimately attend the school. I know when there were some conversations in Clinton about new development going up, I worked with the superintendent so that we could actually just get a sense of how many current students we had coming from various projects. And it gives you a more tangible sense of what the burden of something like that is. It also gives you a sense, because a lot of times when demographic studies are done or building projections are done, they will often estimate the number of anticipated students that you might see. Those numbers really kind of run the gamut. They don't always hold true in different ways in different perspectives on that. And at this point, Jonathan, I'm going to turn to you. Your hand was already up, so thank you, because I was going to say, please check my math on any of this.
So I think one of the things that's important as you're talking about these things is and we get this in a lot of our districts, concerns by school board members about the impact of pilots on the school age. And it's a very controversial topic throughout New Jersey, because the statute did at one time, from what I understand, have a requirement for contribution to school districts, or at least an opportunity for a contribution to school districts, and that was carved out, surprise, surprise, with the members of the legislature who are often not coming from the school board world. In some cases, until a couple of years ago, were actually both municipal officials and simultaneously members of the state legislature. But without the commentary, in general, it's an issue. But it's also important to just keep this in mind, generally speaking, that the idea of pilots is to get land moving, land that may otherwise sit there. Some of it, in some cases, is polluted property, and maybe not as much in this part of the state, but in other places, it's there's a lot of stagnant land in New Jersey. So the design was, listen, the municipality will shoot back every time. They'll tell you this wouldn't happen if it weren't for a pilot. So you'd be lucky to get anything out of that. But yes, if you feel strongly. And you think you can make the argument, I would always rather be on the school board side of that argument with the community, because people know that it does eventually cost money to educate kids. On the other hand, you'll see the back and forth of debate, and on the other hand, municipal officials tend to be a little bit more political than the school board officials, so you end up in that sort of back and forth if you end up there. But it is a really, really controversial topic. You're not the only ones wrestling with it, and it's something that I'd be happy to talk more about, with Rich and your team as you move forward to the extent you need some support.
But I know, and I'm only touching upon it in the sense that some of the conversation here, and kind of going back to that board goal about building community, we have had some loose discussion about the ways that we might better liaise with the municipalities. And you don't know if, just by virtue of interaction and presence, there's opportunity for dialogue there. Andrew?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think I asked this question last week or the week before about, we did this study, demographic study previously, and how often that happens. And I think it's really important that we do interact with the towns. Lebanon Township, there's not any development, Highridge there is.
Right.
And so, I've gone to the meetings, I've talked to people, and, the current mayor has said,
Yeah.
sure, you can have a seat at the table, but the current mayor's not gonna be the next mayor when
Right,
that happens.
right,
So like, but I think it's something we should seriously consider, if not us going, saying, yes, we will go to meetings every once in a while and be that representation,
Yeah.
just so they see us, they're reminded.
And I don't know, now that we're coming into sort of the end of one year and the beginning of another year, and something like board goals becomes a topic that's up for discussion again, it might be an opportunity for us to focus in on those types of things, whether it's, what kind of legislative pressure or, board pressure can be brought to Trenton as regards funding, what kind of liaising with municipalities, at least gives us some voice on those dimensions of the school costs that we're not active in right now, or there's an opportunity to become active. I don't know what happens at the end of the day, and I'm sure there's people who will tell you, you can go howl away at these folks and nothing may change. But I think there might be some merit in at least trying to make that good faith effort to explore those avenues. And if that's a topic that the board sees as goal-worthy going forward, we can certainly figure out what that might look like and how to sort of take action in those directions. Other comments or questions as we prepare for next week? Yes.
We're just still on budget. I just want to, I know I shared this with all of you through one of my updates, but for the public's information as well, there is something called the Taxpayer's Guide to Education Spending on the Department of Education website. It's just, you can get all the data on all the spending for every school district in New Jersey and do comparisons and look at things. And they break it down into, luckily for us, into things like just high school districts. And then you can take what high school districts have more than one high school in it. How many have, some districts, high school districts have 5, some have 2, some have 1. And, so breaking down that data and comparing it comparatively to a district like ours that runs 2 distinct high schools, with, X amount of revenue, it's great to compare that to other places across the state. So, and some of the things that I shared with the board, that's where I get that data from. I just want you to be aware. Sometimes it's a little dated. It's, like sometimes the last data you get is 23-24 school year. So it feels like a long time ago. That usually gets updated sometime in the next couple months. So then we'll see the 24-25 school year, which by that point will feel old as well. But at least it gets to show you some trends and it gets you to do some comparative data analysis. So.
And then I guess as we go forward with any of this, and maybe even including that as possible additions as links to our website, where we're trying to be just provide more information, I think would be great. Anything else that anybody questions or comments on? So then we'll have the official presentation next week and obviously vote on it next week. We are honoring in this moment, as we will again next week, an opportunity for public comment because we present the budget. The public will get an opportunity to comment. So I guess this is sort of practice for next week, that we are at that point in the agenda. During this portion of the meeting, the public is invited to address the board with comments on the 26-27 school year budget. You're requested to sign the register provided and to state your name, municipality residence, group affiliation if applicable, and direct your comments to the school board president. Do we have anyone this evening who would like to make comments?
You in the back? No?
All right. Like I said, it's practice. All right. All right, so we are moving on to the chief school administrator's report.
So again, typically I've been waiting to do my full report at the action session. So next Tuesday you'll hear a lot more from me. I was going to talk a little bit about the budget information website that I linked there, but I think I already covered that unless there's any other questions. So you'll hear more on that.
I actually have a question to Chuck, right? So I was looking at the monthly report, and I was just wondering if there is some opportunity for additional information that might be useful. Namely, we have a detailed withdrawals with a historical withdrawals for the year, but we don't have a historical of enrollments for the year. So I'm not seeing, so I see that we lost 80 students over the school year, but I don't know how many we gained over the school year. So I'm wondering if that might be something we could add, if that's useful, if other people might think that useful.
So you're talking about the chart at the bottom of
Page
the
2.
second page on the
Yes.
lower left.
Correct.
Where there's the codes, the number of students for this month, and then historical.
And is that supposed to be just the past year?
Yeah, that's the historical dates from July 1 of last year,
Yes.
according to the top. Yeah. So that's
Yeah, we can look at how many students come into
just
the
a
district
thought,
there.
just to see for trending purposes.
Absolutely, yeah.
The other thing I noticed on this, which I just want clarification on, and I think I know what it is, but I'm not sure. There's one withdrawal with his D5 economic necessity entered employment. I assume that's an 18-year-old who decided to leave school because they need to go get a job.
Yes, and sometimes they'll give us that information so we can code it correctly. Sometimes, they just quit school or leave school and don't finish it.
Disheartening to see that 3 months before the end of the year.
It is.
And I'm just wondering, I assume we offer some type of understand what's going on, here are your options to complete your
There's a long-
schooling, GED type of stuff.
Yeah, there's a long process that goes into it before anybody actually gets a sign out. I mean, Mike, do you want to chime in on any of this? I mean, one of the things I know I've always done is make sure that the students and the parents have plenty of counseling, plenty of resources. They understand what help we can give them. We connect them with county services, municipal services, any ways that we can keep that kid in school, we do. There are just some times that students just don't want to do it, and sometimes parents, don't think that's what's in the best interest of their students either, and it's hard to argue against a parent when they feel like it's better for their child to go out and work.
There are a number of things, factors that go into a student that might withdraw at this point. We do meet with them individually and offer them and link them to community resources depending on their situation. It obviously is disheartening to see a student that is so close, but it's hard to tell exactly what the individual student is experiencing. But we do offer them, meetings with the counselors, we offer them resources, and again, linkages to anything that we can to help them, be as successful as possible with their next steps.
Great. And then one other thing about the historical enrollment piece from earlier, and I should have said this before, and you may not have it, but the reason for enrollment might be good as well. Move into district or leaving a private school, or, just so we can see those same trends.
Yeah, if we were what I would try to do is duplicate this chart. There's the same state codes that we use when people come in, transferred from school within state, out of state, private school, things of that nature. So we can try to do all those codes.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, we really, when we get enrollments though, we don't record the same information, often it's just because they moved into the district, we really don't record that in the system. When we have a withdrawal, we have to put a transfer code in there, but when we're receiving them, it's usually just because they moved into our district. We don't really record any specifics about the reason behind that enrollment.
Yeah, and I'll expand on the reason why. There are some people in my district who think that there are people leaving the school in droves to go to be homeschooled for reasons, I don't know. And if we record that there are people leaving to be homeschooled, but we're not recording that people are coming from homeschooling in, it may look like that is a trend. So I'm just wondering if we can, more information the better. I don't want to make a ton of work, but I'd just like to see trends.
Yeah, let me see what we can do. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's it? No other
Good, yeah.
questions? All right. On my report, we have a couple of things here. One, the first one is the resolution that Tara had worked on, requesting greater transparency, predictability, and full funding of the New Jersey school funding formula. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. I don't know if the specifics of it, sort of the language resonates, it makes sense, and if it's something that we think we can vote on next week and sort of move on, this would be the opportunity if there was any sort of changes, amendments, or revisions that anybody would suggest.
So
Right.
Tara and yourself drafted this?
It was really, I have to give Tara the credit, she sort of was, I think, motivated on our conversation last month, went and did the research and pulled it together.
Right, thank you, Tara.
Yeah.
So my question would just be, there's some piece of it that's the kind of like, here's the complexity, Trenton. You know, whereas, a few whereas paragraphs that I would just want to make sure. It was what I remember being explained to me, but I wouldn't want those to be technically wrong. So have you had a chance to look at it?
I'd like to go through it in greater detail now that our budget's approved. I can spend a little bit more time just to review
Okay.
and make sure that I agree with everything.
As far as the language, as a
The
resolution.
credibility will drop if it's, well, you know, that's not actually how it's done. It may be how we kind of understand it as laymen,
Right.
but, and then I think the last was that, okay, who we're gonna put it to? We're gonna send it to NJSBA, the delegate assembly, distribute it to the governor and members of the representative district. Okay, got it. So it's very clear about who we're gonna send it to.
And this one is, it comes up all the time, it's been such a common theme, even on our presentations from school boards. It's very convoluted, and even these experts that have been doing it are saying we need to address this. It's,
Yeah.
you know, and the timeliness of it, and also the big part too is, you know, we're not getting back what we're paying in, and
Yeah, I mean, from my personal opinion, it's clear that something's broken or not
Yeah.
working well. The suggestion to have Katie take a look is just to make sure it's
I love it.
technically sound so that if it needs to be tweaked, we can, and then it carries more weight.
I did read through all the whereases, nothing stuck out to me, but we'll make sure Katie's been.
It's certainly how I understand it as a layman, some of the issues that are up.
Okay, anything else on that? Once-
We
Andrew?
be submitting it to our municipalities, our region, you know, our individual, the governments of our, or copy them, I don't know if you CC our local governments, but to know that, you know,
we're concerned, and we've been,
Mhm.
doing our.
I mean,
due
right,
diligence.
they're not obviously actors in the
right, I
equation
don't,
of
like, it's
this.
more of a
Yeah.
carbon copy, I
Yeah.
don't know if that's a,
But
if
that
that's a
kind of
formal
also
term.
goes with our trying to be transparent and letting them know that,
Mhm.
you know, this is what, these are the tasks we're giving, and we're doing the best we can. It's
Right.
not like we're just nilly-willy raising taxes, you know.
So I would like to see that, you know, we officially let our sending municipalities know that we're taking a stand on this.
Maybe sending district presidents could
Well,
be CC'd as well. just maybe
you know,
they do the
it's,
same thing.
so now that you bring that up, and actually the next item on the agenda is the board leadership roundtable. So what actually works kind of nicely there is we now have everybody's contact from all of those board leaderships. So I can very easily communicate out, hey, here's a sample resolution of what we're doing. So on the March 26th, we had the President and Vice President roundtable. If you recall, this was sort of a reconstituting of a roundtable that for a number of years went on and then it sort of stopped in and around COVID and wasn't resumed. And so and now I think actually it matches very nicely with one of our goals of trying to connect with community, liaise with community. We had good attendance. All but 2 of our sending districts were able to have representatives there. It was an opportunity for us to sort of go around, meet who was there, and really discuss a number of issues that we were all sort of confronting. Obviously, budgeting season being upon us was a big topic of discussion. It was kind of interesting, just listening in the room, that you had one or two districts who were coming in at that 3% range, and some of the reserves that they were leveraging to be able to do that. And then we were sort of in that 4, and then from there it was 5, 6, 7, 8. I can't remember if it went as high as 9, Andrew, do you recall?
I think eight
Yes, somewhere in the 8 was the rest of it. So I can't remember who brought it up earlier. We learned very quickly the degrees to which we're all in very similar budgetary boats, if you will, with the challenges of what we're doing. And then there was just a number of conversations. Oh, we did broach that we had the regionalization study going on, and welcomed all of the districts to participate in that. We have 4 of them. I think it's 4, now 5, because I think there was one that we caught up with like the next day.
One
was
gave
part
us
of it.
the resolution the day that the day after we actually submitted to the state for grants.
Right, and we were sort of clear that once it's officially recognized by the state, they can still join that. So it's sort of an open invitation, and this was an opportunity to sort of get to know one another. And you know, Andrew filled in for Tara, who wasn't available. Feel free to chime in on any of the details. I would say there was just like a robust but very earnest conversation about the dynamics of regionalization, what makes it possible, what makes it challenging, the considerations why districts would find it attractive versus districts that would not find it attractive. And I would say that was, I think, probably the biggest part of our conversation that night. There was also then a desire, to continue meetings, so we're hoping to have at least one more meeting before the end of the year and sort of keep this going. But there were some smaller discussions about the desire to have exploratory conversations, whether it's among administrations or further among boards, about if there's funds or monies out there that might be pulled or leveraged advantageously from professional development, coordinated professional development efforts, conversations around title funds, around health pools. Like off the top of my head, Katie, I don't know how many folks are in the same health shift that we're in. And you know, whether there's other explorations there. Things like transportation, things like special ed transportation. These are the things that particularly smaller districts are bigger pressure points, I think, for them. And recognizing that even if regionalization is a long-term study or a conversation that never even happens, there are ways that there would be continued interest in sort of exploring the pooling of those kinds of resources. So very much
we're
just
actually doing that now with some training monies, right?
We are the Title II Consortium, and we have something called the Hunterdon County ESC, which is the Ed Services Commission, that services a lot of shared service functions for the county. And that's one of the things that we're actually going to be doing this coming year, is pooling all of our resources and using that for district-wide footprint professional development.
Right, and I think that was cast as a bait for some of the districts that may not be interested in regionalization or not off the cuff, being like, well, we're already doing this and see we're benefiting from it. So like, let's baby steps instead of being like all in. Right? Some districts want to do this, right now,
right,
because they're struggling. And others don't want to do it because they're not struggling. But if they can see the benefit in small pieces, they might be able to see the benefit.
The Title II is like professional development, but in the articulation things that Rich is going to talk about tonight, that was one of the things that I heard other superintendents saying, well, if we're going to hire a reading specialist to come in and train on this program, it would be nice if everybody in our footprint could participate in that. So that's where ESC can coordinate a trainer, invite everybody in, spend the money once instead of spending it 2 or 3 times, and then get more bang for the buck.
And I think, one of the things I would make clear is us, and certainly hosting the meeting, facilitating the conversation, we sort of articulated that the regionalization study, we saw it as simply due diligence and a responsibility on our part to be actively looking at options and opportunities that are there. And, understanding that sometimes districts might be hesitant that even participation is signaling intent. And recognizing that it's a long process, I think we were just trying to convey that idea that we're happy to look at all options, opportunities, and explorations that are out there. But to Andy's point, yes, I think we have some sending districts who are very eager or would be very eager to move in that direction. And then similarly, you have districts who would be very hesitant to move in that direction. And the reasons are as varied as you could imagine. Right?
Can you update us on the status of the study? You may have used the words loosely, but you said it started.
Well, we have our submission in.
So the school regionalization efficiency program is, the grant has been submitted. We actually submitted it about a month ago, and then 2 weeks into it, they came back and said we need a couple more documents, which was all the resolutions that all the boards had passed. We had to compile all that, upload that. That was all submitted 2 weeks ago, and now we're waiting to hear. It says application review.
Okay.
So the application has been submitted to the state. As soon as we hear from them that it is approved or not approved, then we'll.
So the study is not started yet?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And even when we get approved for the grant, the next process will be typically going out for an RFP for a vendor that will then take on this project, right? The vendor will take on the project, and that's what this grant will pay for. It'll pay the vendor to do the study, do all the due diligence, to collect all the information, make recommendations for all boards to review, determine if they like what they see, if they don't like what they see. And there'll probably be more than one recommendation. There'll probably be multiple paths that we can move it. Regionalization might be one thing, like one K-12 region, right, for all of our municipalities. Another one could be a K-12 region for the Voorhees footprint, or a K-12 region for the North Hunterdon footprint. Another one could be a 7-12, regionalization thing where, elementary schools maintain their elementary schools in each individual area, but then we have a shared middle school kind of environment. Or it could just come up with things that say, here's what we recommend you do with shared services. You're not going to save any money, and educationally, when it comes to money, and we talk a lot about money because it's budget season, but the biggest reason to do this is for the purpose of education, not necessarily for savings. Right. Hopefully there will be some fiscal savings as well, but the real reason is for educational continuity, making sure that the curriculum is the same for all of our students going K-12 all the way up through their entire career, their educational career. So,
and I think one of the things you hear about is the difficulty with our K-8s, depending on their size, whether it's programs, offerings, and opportunities some have that or don't have, depending on really the size and recognition that there are educational and experiences that can be leveraged differently across a larger footprint.
I'm stepping all over Rich Broom's toes because he's doing a presentation on articulation tonight. He's probably over there going, well.
Let me just ask, we're going to have these conversations for many months or years maybe. But is it possible to have a K through 12 district that has additionally some sending districts that only send in after high school, for high school?
I don't know an exact answer to that. I believe it is, because there are plenty of areas I know that are K-12s that had other schools pay tuition to come to them, right? And so, yes, I think it is possible. I don't know in our current status how to get from where we're at to that point. I don't know. And I think it's a lot of hoops to jump through to do that.
Okay, anything else? All right, everything else is pretty much just updates. We have obviously our annual budget hearing and regular board meeting next week, April 28th. I'm sorry? Oh, right, we're going to be meeting at 6 o'clock for HIB hearing. Before the meeting itself ideally would start at 7, the official meeting.
Yeah, so
right.
Our idea would we'll start a public meeting at 6, and then go into public session or executive session.
Yeah.
Do the HIB hearing, and then come out hopefully around 7. If we come out before 7, it's up to the board whether they want to start before 7 or wait until 7 o'clock to start.
So that's something, if you can let Rich know about that availability, we can factor that into next week. And then we have graduation season upon us. The dates for Voorhees and North, June 16th, 9 and 10:30 a.m. respectively. Now, for those of you who are new, I can't remember the order in which sort of the communications begin that you have the opportunity to participate in the graduation. And there are even coordinated that if you're aspiring to be in both, you can start at Voorhees, get some coordinated transportation to come here for the 10:30 kickoff as well. Beyond that, I know there's communication about things like robes and hoods and stuff like that as well.
There'll be a ton of communications regarding graduation coming out, but yeah, the general idea is that for board members that want to participate in both ceremonies, we arrange for a bus to pick us up here. Usually around 8 o'clock, 8:15. We leave, go to Voorhees, everybody gets ready, has a few refreshments, and then we get to the Voorhees ceremony. We go through the Voorhees ceremony, and then as soon as that's done, we beeline to the bus, jump on the bus, they run us back down here, we get off, march on to Northfield, and they're usually just about to start at that point, and then North Hunterdon's graduation starts. So it's a hectic morning, but it's a great morning. You can participate in both. It's really something to see, because both schools do a phenomenal job with their graduations. They're both a little different though, and you can see a flavor with each, but it's really interesting to see what they do.
And then, I don't know, does anybody have a student graduating this year? So
Yeah.
some really unique, having experienced it myself, it's a phenomenal opportunity to be on the field when that happens.
And there'll be
Exactly.
special
Yeah.
invitations out to you to talk about, what you would like as part of that ceremony. So.
Okay, so more information to come on that. All right, so we have actually our regular opportunity for public comment. During this portion of the meeting, the public is invited to address the Board of Education with comments. You're requested to sign the register provided and state your name, municipality of residence, group affiliation if applicable, and direct your comments to the school board president. All comments will be considered by the Board of Education, and a response may be forthcoming if and when appropriate. Individual school board members may not respond to the speakers at the time of their appearance. The public comment period will be a maximum of 30 minutes in length unless there are unusual circumstances. You'll be allocated 3 minutes to speak, and no one will be permitted to speak more than once on the same topic until all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. Please keep your comments respectful and non-defamatory, and maintain the level of decorum appropriate for a public meeting where students may be present and in the audience. Do we have any members of the audience who would like to speak at this time? Okay, moving on. Curriculum Instruction Technology, we have Rich Brown, Director of Curriculum, presenting on articulation and student achievement.
Good evening, everybody. I was glad to hear such a great conversation about articulation to give a little preview to what we're going to be talking about today. So my title is Director of Curriculum Articulation and Student Achievement. So often we talk about the student achievement part and the curriculum part, but I thought it would be good to talk about the articulation part today to give you a little taste of what we look at for articulation and what we do with articulation. So there's two areas I really wanted to focus on. One is, why is articulation important, and then how do we go about articulating? And we can answer and ask questions throughout, so please feel free to ask questions at any point. Yes?
If you're working the definition of articulation, it's not how well you're pronouncing words, right?
No, that is one definition for articulation, but in a school sense, the way that I look at it is a way to provide a smooth and continuous educational experience for students. So really we try to work together. We have, the way I always look at it is, we used to have 9 middle schools. Now with Bloomsbury attending, we have 10 middle schools, and we have 2 K-5 districts that send to one of those 10. So we have 13 districts in total. And the articulation part is really looking at them all as being interconnected and trying to work together to help to have a smooth transition for the students throughout their career in education.
If this was a K through 12 district with no sending districts, would you keep that in your title? Would there still be articulation?
That is a great question, because I used to work in a K-12 district, and those articulations that took place were between the buildings. So, yeah, it's just a different kind,
So
yes.
it gets even more complicated. Vertical articulation
Yes.
between buildings. There's horizontal from grade level to grade level. So,
Probably horizontal.
as educators, we're great at making up all kinds of words.
Call them out.
It's just making sure everybody's, on the same page.
So thank you for
Starting with that question, yes, that's a very important part. So when we look at that articulation, we look for curricular alignment, we look for instructional calibration. These are all kinds of things that we talk about through the articulation process, and I'll show you some of the things that we do to do this. Obviously, the gap reduction, there's a lot of conversations in identifying areas where students are struggling within individual subject areas or in a more global sense. So we can talk about some areas that we might need to focus on to help reduce those gaps. The goal from our perspective, the high school district perspective, is that we want to be able to support students from the first day that they get here. Think about it. If we get a student here and we don't know anything about that student and we don't know anything about their education, then it might take us a marking period to find out, wow, this student is struggling, they need some support. So throughout all of these discussions that we're going to be talking about here, our goal is to be able to know the student who's coming in as soon as they get here, to be able to give them the supports that they need to be successful from day one. That's really our goal. And then a lot of our articulation with the sending districts comes in the form of professional development. We already talked about trying to use Title II funds to help facilitate professional development among all of these districts as well. So there's really three main areas through which we do this articulation. There are, and I'll talk about each of these in detail after this. There are regular superintendent meetings, there are subject area articulation meetings, and other ones that I'll talk about, and then we also have our teacher coaches. So those are the three main vehicles that we use to help facilitate articulation. So the superintendents do meet monthly. I think it's this Friday is the next one. So, and it's been really good turnouts for those meetings where they discuss topics that are relevant to that time period. A lot of discussions about budgets recently, discussions about using Title II funds for professional development, those kinds of things. But every month they also talk about shared services. What if there's a district that has a need for an art teacher, but maybe not a full-time art teacher. Maybe they need a part-time art teacher. And there's another district that's interested in a part-time art teacher. So those discussions have brought about a lot of shared services where, for example, if there's a world language teacher that they only need 2 days a week or something like that, it's really hard to find somebody to fill those positions. But if they're able to work together and maybe hire a full-time person and share them among districts, it's a much easier position to fill in that sense. A lot of data sharing. So, I've shared with you, PSAT results. When we get those PSAT results, I always break it down by sending district and share that information with the superintendents. There are ELA and math placement tests, so a lot of discussions about the results from those placement tests. This Friday, I'm going to be sharing with them. There were some questions throughout the course selection process that recently took place. Superintendents were interested in, well, how many of our students are going into Spanish 2 rather than Spanish 1? Or what level of Spanish are they going into? So I prepared all that. I'll be sharing that with them this Friday. And obviously when all this information is shared, they're just getting the information from their students and no student names or anything like that. But we try to give them an idea of basically if there's something that they want to find out about their students, how they're doing when they get to high school, we give them that information. There was a question one year about science and how students are doing in science when they get into high school. So we're able to break that information down and share it with the superintendents so that they can look at their programs. A lot of the superintendent meetings focus on planning for the October in-service. So a few years ago, we did get all of the sending districts on board, not with the exact same calendar, but most of the same professional development days, and that was a big accomplishment. And they all agreed that October in-service day, that they would all have a full day professional development day. So since we started doing that, we have all of those districts have been joining together for professional development on that day. We're in the process of planning that day for next year. This Friday, I'm going to be sharing with them a draft agenda and sharing some keynote presenters that I've gathered to get their opinions on which one would be best for us. But all of those discussions take place in those superintendent meetings that take place on a monthly basis. I think this is the second year now where the superintendents have agreed to have a transition coordinator for each building. So there is a transition coordinator for North Hunterdon and a transition coordinator for Voorhees, and it's a stipend position that the superintendents pay through their budget. And the goal is to create activities and to help students and parents with that transition process from middle school to high school. So they plan, actually they were just today, I know the North Group's student ambassadors were in the sending districts talking to the 8th grade students about that transition process. And there is a transition web page that I linked here that I think that you will receive this PowerPoint if you don't have it already.
I sent it out.
Okay. Okay. So there is a link to a transition web page that the coordinators put together, which tried to take everything together to help 8th grade parents and students see the process of what they go through, from registering with Aspen to sports to course selections. Try to put everything that they need in one page there, and it's separated by North and Voorhees as well, although most of the information is for both. So those monthly superintendent meetings are a great way to communicate. And then there are the subject area articulation meetings. So I'll show you the list of all of the different subject areas that get together, but we do have regular subject area articulation meetings, and those help to form that community of educators. And you just alluded to it earlier today that there are many districts, and among our sending districts, that there might be 1 or 2 math teachers or 1 or 2 social studies teachers. So they don't really have anyone to share those ideas with or to observe or anything like that. We usually try to tie observations in with these articulation meetings, usually in the morning, have an opportunity for people to come over to observe some of the classes in that subject area, and then in the afternoon have the actual articulation meeting. But it's just about forming that community of educators. We talk about updates from the state, relevant topics, the same data that I talked about before, we share on a bigger scale, not the individual districts. And we share best practices. That's one of the best things, and share resources that people are familiar with, or talk about what they need. What are the things that you're finding that students are struggling with in that subject area, and really just develop that community. So in October, one of the things that I'm really happy about with doing that October in-service is that when we get people together in October, there's no need to remove people from classes because there's no classes on that day, and there's no need to pay a substitute because there are no classes going on that day. So we have the bulk of our articulation meetings on that October in-service. And for the other articulation meetings in the spring, people send 1 or 2 representatives. But in October, because there's no school that day, it's everybody. So for these subject area articulation meetings, it's everybody from 6th grade through 12th grade able to get together in one room to talk about the things that are going on with that subject area. So I have the list of all of the subject areas that we do, but the even better part, as I walk around popping into all these meetings, is we're able to set up pre-K to 5 articulation meetings. And obviously we don't have any representatives from that, but most of these districts, they only have 1 or 2 teachers in those subject areas. So let me tell you something. You go to a kindergarten articulation meeting, there is a lot going on in that meeting. And they're very passionate, and they don't really have that community to talk with. So just having that opportunity to bring them together is really a great opportunity. So we usually host these at North Hunterdon, and there are meetings going on all over the place, and it's great to stop into them. After that, we have, for our core subject areas, we have a spring articulation meeting as well with child study team, ELA, math, science, social studies, and we combine world language and multilingual learners as well. So those articulation meetings take place in the spring. We just recently completed the last one of those. But for the core subject areas, we like to do that second one because there's a lot to talk about. So, in addition to those subject area articulation meetings, we regularly have curriculum coordinator meetings, usually 1 or 2 a year. This year, as we were transitioning from NJSLA testing on the Pearson platform to the Cambium platform, some of the curriculum coordinators who are also the district test coordinators said, can we get together to talk about what we need to do with this new platform? So we had a great meeting with representatives from all the sending districts talking about there's this huge file that has to be completed in November, and it was let's just say the state doesn't always give us a lot of great information for that. So we were able to get together and share information. And we've had follow-up. We basically created a community of district test coordinators in our district as well to talk with about the new testing platform and things like that. There are special services, open houses regularly. And then the counseling department has meetings. 8th grade counselors meet with 9th grade counselors just to help with that transition from 8th grade to 9th grade. Again, with the goal of supporting the students from the day one, from when they get here. And then the third part of this is our teacher coaches. So we do have an ELA coach and a math coach. It's been 6 or so years that we've had these positions. They, again, work to help the departments operate as if they're in one district. Their goal is they primarily work with the 8th grade teachers in those 10 sending districts. So they try to get to each district each week or every other week. You think about if they go to 2 districts a day for 5 days, then they're able to get to 10. But they also work with the high school teachers, trying to help support them. They do some co-teaching. They do observations, not formally, the informal observations, and provide feedback, throughout the testing process and with the placement process, things like that. But one of the great things about them, since they started in these positions, is that it allows for that constant communication. Instead of just having communication at those 2 articulation meetings, it's constant. So, we're able to constantly communicate with the ELA and math teachers in our, in all of the districts on a regular basis. So we really know what's going on, and we're able to provide supports. We're able to highlight some of those things. So if one thing is great is going on in one district, we're able to share that at articulation meetings or ask them to provide a demonstration of it, things like that, because we're actually in those classes, and we see all of the students. So one of the greatest things to see is when we have our 8th grade student orientations, when those students come in, when Maria and Sarah are there, they're greeting them by name. It's great to have a high school teacher know your name before you've even started in the high school. And obviously they help with placement decisions, because not only are they there, they know the students, they know what they're capable of, and they're able to help with those decisions and give feedback as far as what level is best for them. Yes?
These are full-time?
Yes.
This is their role.
Yeah, they primarily work with the 8th grade teachers and students, but then we also help support the high school students and teachers.
And what do they tend to be more experienced teachers that have maybe towards the end of their careers, or, you don't come out of school doing this, right?
You don't. So the people that we have teaching are doing those roles right now are veteran teachers. Yeah, and one of which was actually a middle school teacher for the most of her career, so it gives a unique perspective. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that was everything. Were there any other questions that you had, or anything else you wanted to ask about? Yes.
So, sounds absolutely fabulous.
Great. Good.
Thank you. I imagine that part of the articulation process is very focused on making sure when you're talking about core curriculum that students coming up from the 8th grades are ready for what you're offering at the high school.
Right.
Are you ever experiencing the opposite, where you have kids coming up from 8th grade and maybe their program was better or more advanced than what the high school is doing? And if you are experiencing that, do you react to it?
Districts as well. If there's something that's going well, we want to share that with everybody. And those are a lot of the conversations that take place at the superintendent meetings too. If we're noticing something that's really great in one district, that's one of the great things about the teacher coaches and the articulation meetings, is we can say, hey, this is going on here. It's leading to great results as shown on these test scores, or this, the PSAT results or NJSLA results. Do we want to talk about bringing this into the other districts?
How about bringing it to the high school? Have you ever felt that you need to up your game at the high school level because you need to meet the readiness of what's coming in from 8th grade?
Maybe with individual districts where there are some, really great things going on. So, we often say that it sometimes takes, the first semester with freshman classes to find out where everybody is and not get them on the same level, but just to find out where everybody is so you can make those adjustments. And if we have students coming in who are, for example, reading on a much higher level, that's great. Then we can challenge, the students with higher level text and things like that. So yeah, we meet students wherever they are. So if they're at a higher level, then yeah, that's something that we need to look at too. It's kind of, the standards are the standards. A lot of the conversations take, for example, in science, there are always discussions about, I wish that this topic was covered in middle school. It would make it easier to start off in high school. It's not in the 8th grade standards, so you have to start at the high school level. It's just not there. And a lot of times, the high school teachers aren't really looking at those middle school standards, so it just opens up people's eyes about what is required at those levels. Yeah, sure.
Merrill, some of the things
Certainly with math, we have the ability, high schools have ability to receive kids at very different math levels, because as they move through the middle school, you have kids on very accelerated trajectories who then just sort of land here at an accelerated trajectory. I'm trying to figure out, though, if you're asking, more broadly about other kinds of practices and things of that sort, because having done some of the work, some of similar work myself, sometimes you see, and now I'm speaking more specifically through like an ELA lens. I know I've worked with teams where there have definitely been practices and things that we've been able to learn about that happen more commonly at lower levels that you begin to sort of import at a high school level. And that could be a simple thing as literature circles, or that students might have experiences with at younger grades, where historically high schools will tend to trend towards whole class reading, but then find ways to diversify their practice to sort of meet the more varied experiences that kids are having, some of the success that they're having. I also don't know if you're talking about specialized programs or projects or clubs or things like that as well?
I was talking about academics.
Okay.
And I was thinking we have 3 different levels as well. So there are students that are going to come in with, like we have an honors track that a lot of students are coming into with that honors track. So.
And
that's actually one of the pieces of data that we look at with the superintendent to show.
At each, for the core areas, which placement, where students are being placed, overall. Yeah. Any other questions about the articulation piece? Yes.
How do you feel about the current status of the sending districts? Is there a lot of
stark disparity, like district by district coming in, or is it evening out? Or this has been a process?
Less disparity than there used to be. I know that when I started in this position, I think it was 2017, one of the first things that I did was look at that PSAT results for the 9th grade students, and it was all over the place. We don't see that anymore. It's pretty consistent now. Yeah. And I think a lot of those conversations lead to that.
I think a lot of times, I think you've made the point that districts' ability to see where their data stands relative to other sending districts' data can often sort of open up discussion about opportunity. And I think, to your point, Merrill, I think one of the nice things about this design, coming on the heels of a conversation of we're 13 different districts, despite the reality of that, there's systems here that are really operating not as though we're 13 separate districts, which I think is important work. So,
and one of the important things about those discussions
is that we form a relationship. If I notice that there's a district where, wow, in looking at this information, they did much more poorly on a placement test than the other ones did, or the percentage of students going into honors is so much higher here. We have the relationship that we can reach out and have those conversations. It's not, nobody views it as, oh, the big bad high school is trying to change everything here. It's just about forming those relationships. That's what these meetings are really all about. Yeah. Any other questions? So outside of the articulation, I did want to mention just on the agenda, there are 4 items there on the agenda under curriculum. Home instruction, a consultant, new textbook to approve, and the revised school calendar. Were there any questions on any of those as well? Or do you want me to say anything about them, or are you going to talk about them?
No, I mean, the school calendar, I can just, that's 2 unused snow days. We had 4 built into the calendar. We only used 2, which I can't believe we only used 2 snow days this winter. It felt like the longest winter we've had in a decade. But I think it was all about timing, and so that's why we did it.
Okay.
Home instruction, I did want to mention, we did talk about that last time quickly, and actually Rich Brown, brought this to my attention, but one of the most important reasons for approving home instruction, so we had that discussion, why we approve it, because it has to be done anyway, was in order to receive state aid, a district must prove students are receiving the legal minimum of 5 hours for general ed students and 10 hours for special education students. And the board's approval basically serves as the official record that the district is compliant with state attendance and funding laws. So that allows us to get, it's one of the requirements for state funding that we adhere to this, and that's one of the ways the board shows that we are adhering to it is by approving these. And there's also, the fiduciary responsibility and also the personnel approval. The personnel approval isn't specific to each individual teacher here because this board approves them at a reorg so that every certificated staff member is able to provide home instruction. But now you see how many hours the students are getting, and we did add a little footnote there to give you what the contractual hourly rate is, so that at least you have an idea what it's costing. Other than that, no, I don't think it's.
Are they required to be in the home, or in this day and age, can it be
It's I'd say 95, maybe 100% virtual.
a Zoom or a Google Meets? Or something?
It's Google Meet, yeah. I mean, a lot of it is, most of it is virtual.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if it's not virtual, we will meet in a neutral location, like a
Library.
They used to use the North County Library a lot in Clinton. So we meet students there, providing instruction.
Any other questions or clarifications? Thank you, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
All right, under policy and school security, we just have updated job descriptions. Dr. Burgess, I didn't know if there was anything specific that you wanted to say to those, or?
No, so we're just doing a little house cleaning, really, is what it comes down to with job descriptions. We tried to do this over the last year, and we didn't get as far as we wanted to, so we're trying to accelerate it a little bit more now and do 2 or 3 and categorize them. And so school counselor and student assistance coordinator, we went through those job descriptions, looked at what our expectations are for them, looked at the New Jersey School Board's model job descriptions, and then this is a combination of those 2, the recommended language changes in there. So any questions?
Are these open job postings right now, or just updating them in the case that it comes up in the future that it's updated?
It's just so it's in the future, it's updated, there's no postings right now.
Cynthia?
I just happened to notice with the school counselor and the SAC, school counselor does say maintains student records and ensures their confidentiality. And for the SAC, I didn't notice that. So I was just wondering, I just found it interesting that it's on one and not the other, but they're both dealing with sensitive topics and confidentiality for the students.
Yeah, I mean, a SAC is part of the counseling department, so they would have those same confidentiality requirements, but I can look at the individual language and see if there's a way to incorporate that into the SAC, just so it's memorialized.
Yeah, just so it's.
Yeah.
Any other items or questions? All right, we have finance, facilities, and transportation, and obviously a number of these items will get populated as we wind into next week. Katie, could you just maybe run them down for us so that, again, contextualizing what they are, why they are, and what we'll see?
Absolutely. So the grant of easement for Elizabethtown Gas, I was hoping to have a little bit more of an update today. I am hopeful that we'll have a final contract to present to the board next week to allow Elizabethtown Gas on the property and to install the gas lines. Currently, we're looking at them installing 3 meters, one in the back of the building, one at our snack shack, and another one on their maintenance garage for the maintenance garage heating. They've been very gracious in absorbing the cost of putting in the gas line from the road to each of those locations. But we do need to give them the easement to allow them on the property and allow them access. So we are right now working with legal counsel on getting the wording and terminology correct, making sure that we're okay with all of the rights of access that they have proposed in that easement, as well as the engineer at Pratt Zongen, our architectural firm, to make sure that they're comfortable with everything as well. So we're hoping to get that finalized this week, so we can have that attached for your approval next week, and then it allows Elizabethtown Gas to keep moving. Competitive contracting, the next 2 resolutions is part of my spring process of looking at, do we need to go out for RFP for anything this year? I typically like to do anywhere from 3 to 5 years even if we're satisfied with the vendor for, let's say, auditing services, architectural, things of that nature, every 3 to 5 years, I still like to go out for RFP just to make sure we're competitive with pricing and other services that they're providing. So not to say that we're unhappy with services, but just to do our due diligence. So I am looking at competitive contracting for our SIS system, which is our student information system. We spend a considerable amount of funds with our current vendor, and I think it's good due diligence to go out for competitive contracting. And the reason why it's called competitive contracting and not necessarily a normal RFP is because you're using pricing and other factors, so you kind of develop a rubric to analyze the vendors and their submissions and say, 35% of our score goes to, the certain analysis of what services that they provide. And we can kind of break down and evaluate each submission of those vendors to how most likely G will utilize their service and characterize the importance of the different services that they provide us. So I'm asking the board to allow us to use that competitive contracting under public school contracts law for us to do that this spring. And 12.3 is allowing us to go out to evaluate proposals for insurance brokers, and that's using EUS. So that's another carve out of the public school contracts law to allow us to go out for what's essentially an RFP for insurance brokerage. We went out for our health benefits broker in 2024. So we are due to go out for our liability insurance broker. So that is the one that I'm asking the board to approve. So I'll be attaching a resolution to state that I would like the board to allow us to go out for that EUS RFP for the insurance broker for liability insurance. And there's a few other RFPs that I will be soliciting. I don't need the board's approval to go out for them, but I will most likely be soliciting auditing services, architectural services as well. So just for your awareness. The only other item to note is 12.4, the purchase is above 53. We are looking at purchasing the Chromebooks for a 1-to-1 initiative for next year. We typically have this approved around this time of year because it's very difficult to get all of the Chromebooks in hand to issue to all of the students in August. So we try to do this as quickly as we can in the spring so that G can have all of those Chromebooks ordered and in our hands so that they can be set up and then issued to students over the summer. So that will be on this agenda.
With Chromebooks, I believe we collect them annually, right? Or no, I can't remember. And then at the end of their...
collect them if there's a problem.
Okay, all right. And then at the end of their lifespan, what do we usually do with them in terms of selling them to some vendor out there who buys old technology, or do we have a process for that?
Yeah, the Chromebooks we collect, we use...
We use gov deals so that we can,
And we usually palletize them, right? I don't think we're selling individual Chromebooks, but we'll palletize things, and somebody who's a recycler will usually come out and, buy 1,000 Chromebooks for whatever.
It allows an open bid so that anyone can put in a bid. We'll get the highest bidder.
I think unless something goes wrong with the machine, you get it as a freshman and you hand it in the senior year.
That's right, yeah.
So this is the Chromebooks for the incoming freshmen.
Correct.
And perhaps anybody who's got a problem, or new students.
And transfers, yeah. A few people that might need a new Chromebook, but yeah. And I think supply chains are very difficult right now, so G's trying to get things. You probably in the office.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's trying to lock in prices now before they continue to go up, and just even availability. I know, it's been a tough year for that.
Actually, a statistic I heard was that Chromebooks have gone up about 50% in the past year simply because of the chips, the ability to source the chips for it. And they're anticipated to go up an additional 50% the next year. So we're looking at potentially 100% increase in the cost of a Chromebook in a 2-year span.
Just to give just an example, we had pricing for hardware for cameras, just for the recording of the cameras. And we had a bid one day, it was $250,000, 48 hours later, it was $380,000. Because the data centers are buying.
Thank you, AI.
Yeah, it's about the RAM and the availability.
My largest corporate client has stopped all global purchasing of computers because of the pricing. They have to rework their budget and figure out if they can refresh the way they're planned. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So typically the attachment for that usually has the exact dollar amount of what we're gonna be purchasing them for, and I did wanna mention that, G is doing his best to find the best pricing on those. It may be a little bit different than you're used to. I may have a not to exceed amount, and then in May I may revise, just so, again, we can lock in pricing, and then I'll have the board approve it again in May with the actual final pricing that we're able to get. But next week is just trying to give us the not to exceed amount so that we can actually solicit the quotations. Everything else is standard, and that will be attached in the next few days for Friday's release of next week's agenda, the training and travel, anything we're disposing of, bills list, financials, etc.
Any questions or clarifications on those items? All right, do we have any updates on community relations and student affairs or delegates reports? I don't know that we have, I know there's the
Well, we have
county meeting
next,
coming
yeah,
up.
county meeting is next week, the 30th. And it's the teacher of the year who is from Spruce Run School. Her last name is Mann. It's going to be at the Chalet. And then it's also going to be the awards for board members as they meet their 10-year, 15, 20. And then those who have reached certification, either certified board member or master board member or certified board leader, those awards will be given out. So it's a nice way to wrap up our year, and it starts at 6 for dinner, and then the program will go, and we usually finish up by 8:30, so.
Is that RSVP still
Yeah,
active? Okay.
yeah, go on, there's no cost, and you
Right.
can do it yourself, just go on to your school board account and register. And then delegates is not till May 16th, that'll be down in Trenton.
All right, I guess that brings us to our executive session, so I do need a call for a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 04-2126-1 for an executive session to discuss matters reflected in the attached resolution. The board expects to be in executive session for approximately 45 minutes. And upon return to public session, action will not be taken. Will it?
Action will not be taken
Yeah,
tonight.
not tonight, yeah. But we do have to vote to go in. So can I get that motion, Stephen? I think motion, Dan had the second, all in favor? Aye, opposed, abstentions? Yeah, all right, we'll be back. Got a call for a motion and a second to reconvene public session. Can I get a motion? All right, Brian was quick. Dan on the second, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstention? None? All right, obviously, we have reviewed personnel and in executive, and we'll pick up with that vote next week. Do we have any old or new business? I do not have anything in particular.
Just super quick, nothing. One thing I'd like to add to our resolution, just some information in general. I have seen some articles, one Rich Lordy shared with me, one I saw in one of the school board blasts, so many of them. That was behind a paywall, the other one was from NJ.com, but that the legislation, it appears that our legislation is being vocal about the school funding formula currently. So when you were asking before, like, do other people know about, raises in taxes and things like that, like, that's not directly, but partially still involved. So the new Director of Education, I believe, the Leslie Lau, I got that title correct.
Commissioner?
Yeah, has said that it won't be addressed this year, but they will look at it, and they plan to, I guess, have it for next year, but probably then, I would assume, wouldn't be implemented till the following year, right? But I still think that our resolution holds that to be able to back our legislatures, that they're being very vocal and almost demanding that it is addressed, and, I would hope that it would be done sooner or than later to them. So I still think it holds ground for us to continue with that resolution. And then I also think that, I think I might have mentioned it last time we were talking about resolutions, but potentially including a resolution about addressing how healthcare is for schools, because that's our biggest driver of our cost increases. And it's state-run health insurance, so we can't do anything about it but take it. So if it's going to keep happening, I feel that there needs to be something that is done, and I think our legislation should be also driving that to our government officials to consider as well. So I think that that's something that we should consider adopting another resolution for, potentially, if everyone else has that same feeling.
So we have two, one addressing the school funding formula, and then one addressing the...
How healthcare is funded or caps on raising it in general. I mean, it seems, I don't know how it affects other government workers, but only just seeing it here, 20 to 40% for schools, is it also shared across all those? And in general, that's just insanely high. It should be looked at to have a cap. Everything else gets a cap. Why doesn't that get a cap? I don't know, something to figure out wording for in that as well, to have our legislatures consider, because that's a major factor for our costs. We can't continue putting that on to our constituents as the burden of that cost.
So there's, what I'm hearing, there's a couple of dimensions here. We're talking about funding, we're talking about healthcare costs, we're talking about things like pilot deals in municipalities. And as I'm hearing you say that, and again, kind of framing it through possible board goals, as we sort of try to build some voice and momentum around and coordinate some of these efforts, I don't know if we get to a place where on a goal, do we want some subcommittee work done that's sort of imagining who are the recipients of these concerns that we have, what group can sort of work on articulating and sort of promoting action on our behalf.
Mm-hmm. And I assume that it's kind of the school boards, because they have that legislative voice that does seemingly heavily influence decisions in our legislation. So that might be our number one place to look, but also looking to partner with maybe our representative in our
legislative
state,
representative.
Senate or legislative government.
And you had me even thinking about, I'm not off the top of my head, I'm not sure who works on the respective committees of those things.
Or even committees, yeah.
And then also, I know there's often partnering with the professional organizations, like a superintendent's association, who understands very, firsthand what sort of advocacy they want to see in terms of full school funding or other fairness considerations. But I think it's all good ideas. Right.
So what, an idea could be, I remember at one of the Hunterdon County School Board meetings, they had brought in the SBA kind of like one of their legal gurus who kind of gave a little, like, here's what's going on in the legislature right now. We're following this, we're following this. There might be a benefit if we're interested in, if we're at a point where we're saying, who do we need to talk to? Or who is most effective to talk to?
Right.
Maybe asking SBA, one of the legal guys, to come in. We can articulate what our concerns are, and they can advise us, you need to go to these people. These 5 senators, they write all the rules, and if you contact them, make sure they know what your issues are.
It's really done at the county, it's really done at just the county level. The county and the statewide level. You want to get to the policymakers. It's not an individual board, it's really your county NJSBA rep, whoever that is, would be the one to sort of bring your thoughts to the county, pull together with others, and then there's for the group's called, the NJSBA, they actually adopt legislation, or
It's our delegates assembly.
Delegates assembly, that's what it is, and they do this, and they have a fair amount of impact with respect to their lobbyists and whatever else, but they just are less likely to listen to the schools individually than they are healthcare companies or whomever. It's just a reality trend. I mean, the bottom line is that is the best way for you all to get, and you can be leaders. I mean, your district is, you get the most board members, you could be leaders on this if you want, but you have to, you don't want to spin your wheels either. If you have these concerns, you should try to deliver it through and then get other county reps to agree with you and then adopt some of this stuff out of Hunterdon. Yeah.
We're fortunate to have the Hunterdon County School Board president.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Oh.
But I think
that's great. So you know it better. Yeah.
To your point, Stephen, I think there will be a lot of voices looking to gather this energy and this effort over the next year or two, for sure.
And healthcare, Katie was whispering to me about chapter 44.
Because I think the angle that you're going in is, what's binding us to this expensive increase, and that's the chapter 44 legislation.
Right, I remember that, yeah.
So those plans and that plan design is locking us into offering that plan at a very cheap employee contribution rate.
Right.
And as we've articulated, that's what's causing us to be kind of, our hands are tied in that respect. So,
right.
If a resolution kind of spoke to that, and chapter 44 is sunsetting at the end of coming years.
Yes.
So that's something that we are looking at, and vocalizing concerns about chapter 44 while it's sunsetting is a great idea.
Yeah.
Good time.
If chapter 44 were to sunset, now what does that look like moving forward for negotiations with teachers, right? So if we're asking, maybe this isn't the right time, it's a theoretical, but if we now are looking at teachers contributing significantly more for their own health benefits, we're effectively paying them less, right? Like, they have less buying power in the world. So are they now going to come back to the table and we're going to be on the hook for massive raises?
And I don't believe they'll let it expire without replacing it with something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully they'll replace it with something that is mutually beneficial, right?
They can
And that's what I
subsidize
guess,
somehow.
to what Steve's trying to, I guess, articulate is that would be what we could advocate for, right? Is,
Right.
Because if they just let it expire and let it just every district handle it.
Well,
Their
chapter
health care
78
at this
might
point.
still be in place, the collective.
That's true.
bargaining
Chapter
plan.
78 would still be in plan, would be in place, but, I don't know, it would open a lot of, I think, questions.
Yeah, I mean, like, at the end of the day, health benefits are really, really expensive, right?
Yeah.
So that's like the macro side of it, right? Like, it's just not going away, so.
And right now, if their contribution is only based on their employee salary increase and not based on that plan increase that's going up 20%, it's only going up their 3.4,
Yeah.
then obviously it's never going to keep pace. And we're always going to be underwater in those increases.
Okay. All right, but I do think let's kind of keep that in mind as we go to goal setting, as we think about future work. I think it is going to be increasingly important. Anything else? Andrew?
Hate to do it, one more thing. So last meeting, and I don't want to call you out, but Cynthia changed the vote at some point, and I think we need to nail down what that proper process looks like, because I was looking at the Robert's Rules of Order, and it was like, technically we were supposed to like reopen the whole topic to change that vote. I just want to make sure that going forward, we don't do something that's going to bite us in the butt later.
Yeah, we're trying to get some more guidance on that. We have got some more guidance. I don't have answers for you tonight, but yeah, we're trying to get something. So
I want everyone's vote to be what
There's
they intended to be.
clarity
I want
of
to
the
make sure we follow
process.
That's
follow
exactly
the
it.
procedures.
Which actually, thank you for bringing that up. I did ask the board president, Brendan, as well as superintendent, when should I bring up if I needed to change a vote? Just to clarify, to make sure. So if it is different, then yes, we do need clarity.
Right.
I think there's something in the meeting, that's one thing.
Right.
It's after the meeting that we're trying to get clarification for.
It
That
was,
was like the more difficult one.
right. Cool, thank you.
Anything else? Can I get a call for a motion and a second to adjourn? Motion, Andrea, second, Andrew? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? None? All right, that's a wrap, folks. See you next week.